Alpengeist is an absolutely incredible B&M or Bolliger and Mabillard inverted coaster located at Busch Gardens, Williamsburg in Williamsburg, Virginia. And today I'll be reviewing this coaster, talking all about it. So I'll first be going through the layout, then I'll be going through 8 different categories, including intensity, airtime, pacing, drop, length and duration, smoothness, theming, and setting. Then I'll be giving it a final score out of 10. Now I would like to first say, but I didn't get much footage of this coaster, so most of the footage you'll be seeing will be by AIRTIME. But with that out of the way, let's get straight into the review. Alright, so for the layout, you're going to come out of the station and go straight into your 195-foot tall lift hill. It's actually a really nice lift hill. I really like the custom supports. It's kind of meant to look like a ski lift, so that's really cool. It also gives a really great view of really every major coaster in the park if you look around, which is really nice. It is really loud though, so just make sure to prepare for that. But you also go right over some of the pathways, which is really cool. It's also just really big, so that's nice. So after cresting over the top, you'll go into a little pre-drop, and then you'll bank right and whip into your 170-foot first drop. Now this drop is awesome. It just lasts forever. You really are falling for such a long time in this drop. And then you'll level out and get some great positive Gs, and then come up into this really good Immelman, really forceful, and get some really nice whip at the top. So then you'll level out from that, get some more great positive Gs, and whip through your 106-foot vertical loop. This vertical loop is insane. Not quite as good as like a Batman loop, but it still gets some really good forces, and you just fly through it. So then you'll go through this little shed and then come up into my favorite part of the ride, the Cobra Roll. This thing is massive and it's just amazing. It's super forceful and it really whips you to the side. Definitely keep your head forward though, or else you will bang your head on this element, but it is just really good. So then you level up from that and go into 2 little turns, which don't really do anything. They're kind of just there. And you'll whip into the mid-course brake run. So then you'll trim to a varying degree. So then you'll drop off the mid-course, which is a decent little drop, nothing too special. And then into the 0G, which really whips you through. It's awesome. Into a really whippy corkscrew, which is really great. Into one final helix, which doesn't really do much. It's kind of slow. It's kind of just a filler element. But it's alright. It has some cool snow theming on the ground. So I'm going to do a left-hand turn and then hit the brake run. So that's the layout for Alpengeist. Alright, so the first category is intensity, and Alpengeist is just a super intense ride. This thing gets insane positive Gs. The second half isn't really very intense, but the first half is just super intense the whole time. Those inversions just are crazy forceful, and the valleys in between them are just insane. It's just a really intense ride. Not quite the most intense B&M I've ridden. I still think Kumba's more intense, and it's not as intense as rides like I-305 or Sky Rush, but it is still really intense. It's possibly the most intense invert I've ridden. I'd say it's close with like Afterburn, and the Batman clones are also really intense. But yeah, Alpengeist is just a crazy forceful ride. The Gs are really sustained too, because the elements are so big. And it's just a really awesome intense ride. So it's definitely going to get a really good 9 out of 10 for the intensity category. Alright, so next up is the airtime category, and there's really one moment on Alpengeist that gives airtime, and that's that drop off the mid-course brake run. Now in this footage, it's definitely trimming a lot harder than when I rode it, so it definitely went a little bit faster over this drop. But it doesn't really give any airtime in the front, but in the back it gives a nice little bit of floater from what I remember. But it's fine because it's not really meant for airtime. This is an inverted coaster, but it just has that one moment, so I'm going to give it a very low 2 out of 10 for the airtime category. Alright, so next up we have the pacing category, and Alpengeist is a pretty well-paced ride. I'd say through the first half it definitely really flies through and doesn't really lose any speed. As you head up to the mid-course brake run, you definitely do lose a little bit of speed though, and the second half isn't super fast. So it's not like perfectly well paced, but overall it does have some pretty good pacing. But because it does slow down towards the end, especially in that final helix, it's definitely not perfect. So I'm going to give it a very solid 7.5 out of 10 for the pacing category. Alright, so next up we have the drop category, and this drop is incredible. As I mentioned earlier, it's 170 feet tall, and it just lasts forever. It does like almost a full 270-degree turn as you're dropping. It's just, you're just falling forever, and you really get some nice whip in the back. You absolutely get ripped over this drop and the yank to the side. In the front, it's not quite as good, but it's still really good, but you still are just dropping forever. It's not my favorite drop, definitely not as good as some straight drops like Sky Rush, Lightning Rod, El Toro, Steel Vengeance, I-305, some of those rides, but it's a really, really fun drop. Definitely my favorite carved drop I've experienced. So it's going to get a really, really solid 8.5 out of 10 for the drop category. Alright, so next up we have the length and duration category. Now, Alpengeist is a really, really long ride. From drop to brakes duration, it gives about a minute, which is really, really good. And it's over 3,800 feet of track. It's not the longest inverted coaster out there. It's not quite as long as like Montu or Banshee, but it's still really long. In terms of duration, it just feels about as long as like Montu or Raptor. So definitely a nice long ride. The elements last a while. Are really long lasting, and it has quite a bit of them. So it's just overall a really nice long ride. Definitely a really satisfying ride duration. And for an invert, it's really solid ride time and track length. So it's going to get a very solid 8.5 out of 10 for the length and duration category. Alright, so next up we have the smoothness. So this is probably the most controversial part about Alpengeist. A lot of people complain about this ride being rough, and I really don't agree. It does have a little bit of a rattle in the back, I think just because of how intense it is, but in the front it's actually really pretty much butter smooth. And a lot of people complain about some of the jerky parts, like the Cobra and the Midwest Brake Run. If you keep your head forward, they're really not bad. But overall, it's a pretty smooth ride. It just has a little bit of a rattle in the back, but it's really not enough for me to complain about this coaster being rough. It's definitely not rough, and the rattle really isn't bad. So it's going to get a really, really solid 9 out of 10 for the smoothest category. Alright, so next up we have the inversion category, and Alpengeist has some really, really good inversions. Now, this ride has 6 inversions, including an Immelman, a vertical loop, a Cobra Roll, which is 2 inversions, and then a 0G roll and a corkscrew. These are all incredible. The Immelman, it's definitely my favorite Immelman I've experienced. It's just super forceful. You get some nice whip at the top. It even made me gray out, which was just insane. That was a vertical loop, which is definitely one of my favorite vertical loops. Probably my second favorite one on an invert, just behind the Batman loops, just because those are really insane. But you absolutely whipped through this one with some insane speed and force, and that Cobra Roll is incredible. Definitely my favorite Cobra Roll. Just super whippy and intense. You have that awesome 0G roll and the corkscrew, which is definitely one of my favorite 0G rolls, so one of my favorite corkscrews, at least on an invert. So yeah, just some of the best inversions out there. It's just a really good collection of inversions. So I'm going to give an Alpengeist a really, really good, pretty much perfect 10 out of 10, the inversion category. Alright, so next up we have the theming. This ride is pretty well themed. It has a kind of snow theme. It's kind of themed like a snow monster. It's got a lot of like cool like skiing type stuff. There's like a little statue of a guy skiing out front near the entrance, and the logo actually looks like really cool. It's like snow covered and stuff. And like the queue, all the rails are like wooded and stuff, which is kind of neat. And same with the station and like the air gates and stuff. And the back of each seat actually has like a ski, which is really cool. And the wheel covers kind of look cool, like give kind of like a snow feel to it. And there's even like that snow underneath the helix at the end of the ride. And the supports on the lift hill kind of look like ski lifts, so that's kind of neat. So it's got a nice skiing and like snow theme. Definitely not the best themed ride at the park. Definitely not as good, well themed as like Verbolten. But it's got a pretty solid theme. So I'm going to give it a nice 4 out of 10 for the theming category. Alright, so next up is the setting, and Alpengeist has, I guess, a pretty decent setting. There's really nothing too special about it. It kind of takes place like right in the middle of the park. It's like near Griffin. So a lot of the like the parts of the first half of the ride, like the drop, the Immelman, the vertical loop, and the Cobra Roll, you could see kind of from like the middle of the park and stuff. But it has like its own kind of little area, which is nice. And then the stuff in the second half, especially like that final helix, is kind of back towards like the edge of the park, like in the woods and stuff. So that's kind of cool. It's kind of secluded. But the setting overall is really nothing too special. So I'm going to give it a decent 5 out of 10 for the setting category. Alright, so we have come to the end of the video, and for a final score, I'm going to give Alpengeist a very good 9.5 out of 10. This ride is just incredible. It's so intense. It's a very long ride. It's super whippy, just really snappy, awesome, great, forceful elements. It has some nice theming. It's a super smooth ride. It's just massive. It's a really good ride. It's my current number 11 favorite coaster that I've ridden out of almost 140 coasters. It's my favorite B&M invert, my second favorite B&M overall behind Kumba. It is over Afterburn and Montu. It's just a really, really good ride. The elements are just massive and awesome. I think this ride overall is really overhated, especially from the people who call it rough. It's really smooth and just really, really intense. It's just a crazy experience. It's really draining too. It's hard to marathon. I got 8 rides on this during my visit in November, and honestly, it would have been hard to get more just because this thing is really hard to marathon because it is just draining. It's just a really, really awesome ride. You should definitely ride it when you get out to Busch Gardens Williamsburg. Definitely my favorite ride in the park. However, that will definitely change with Pantheon because that thing looks incredible. Alpengeist is a really good ride and definitely one of my favorite coasters that I have ever ridden. So that's it for my review of Alpengeist at Busch Gardens Williamsburg. Let me know your thoughts on this ride down in the comments below, where this ranks for you in the park, where this ranks for you in terms of B&M inverts. Make sure to leave all those thoughts down below in the comments section. But make sure to like this video and subscribe for more coaster content coming soon, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.